Welcome to a summary of Gabor's teachings in Module 2 of the online course. And the theme in this module is triggers, pain, and shame. The outline includes triggers and emotional pain, acceptance of anger and pain, how to handle emotions, feelings versus perceptions, how to be in relationship to feelings, and an understanding of shame. When we watch Gabor works, he goes right to the core with his clients, but he does it with the utmost sensitivity, care, and compassion. And this is what we want to be able to do. This can be triggering not only for the clients, but also for those who are observing, and sometimes also for ourselves as therapists. Because we live our lives out of dynamics that are largely unconscious, and our own unconscious material will come up when we're working with clients, when we're observing processes with others working with clients, or they'll come up as a client in this process of compassion inquiry. And this programming has occurred since early childhood. So we've been programmed as children to react in certain ways based on what's happened to us in the ways that we've covered up or tried to cope with what's happened to us. We keep repeating our early patterns, these early adaptations or coping strategies, because as children they helped us survive. So it can be very frightening to let go of or turn away from these coping strategies. But we need to do that in order to become free of them, in order to come back to ourselves. And these same patterns, these coping strategies that work so well for us as children now get in the way, and they create suffering for us as adults rather than protecting us, because they interfere with our connection to ourselves. If we think about a trigger on a weapon, a trigger is a very small part of that weapon. And the weapon is loaded with an explosive and ammunition. And this is what is within us. This is the unconscious material within us that's triggered by events around us in the present moment. If we're triggered, it's because we haven't fully dealt with, metabolized, processed this unconscious material. And we're like a gun ready to fire. So there is this explosive material in us that we've been carrying all our lives. What we want to do or be able to do is to be curious about what is within us that gets ignited, that gets triggered, and to be more interested in the ammunition, which is inside of us, and the explosive, also inside of us, rather than the trigger, which comes from the outside. Eckhart Tolle says, be at least as interested in your own reactions as the people in situations that evoke those reactions. So that's what we'll invite you to do in this compassion inquiry process. And when you are activated and triggered, do an inquiry into yourself. It's the perfect time to look at ourselves. And by doing so, we take responsibility for being in the present self. And now we'll hear Gabor talk about getting triggered and emotional pain.
These days, we talk a lot about, but that's too triggering, I want you to think about the triggering image. What is a trigger? If you look at a weapon, the trigger is a very small part of the mechanism, isn't it? What there really is a weapon that's loaded, ready to fire, and it's got explosive in it, and it's got ammunition in it. That's you. Then you see something or hear something that happens here on stage that I might say that triggers you. Now in our society we keep the focus on, we mustn't trigger people. But actually, what should we really consider? Should we keep looking at triggers, which is like this tiny little thing? Or should we look at the loaded gun and the ammunition that we all carry and we're so afraid to actually look at?
If all you do is validate your client's emotions, you're not going to help them move forward. Validation of emotions can be helpful, but it's not necessarily going to cause the therapy to progress. If the client believes that I feel the way I feel right now because somebody said or did or didn't do something, then they're still in the role of victim. Their wholeness depends on somebody else. So we don't help people by leaving them in that victim role. We want to move them out of that perspective. The teacher A.H. Almas has a wonderful theory called the theory of wholes. He says that when we're born, we have our essential selves intact. We have clarity, we have presence, we have love, we have value. An infant does not think of themselves as worthless. And the essence is already there. It's intact in the infant, but it has to develop. It has to be developed. For the essence to develop, the environment has to mirror it back. So the adults in that child's environment need to mirror that essence back to the child. Also, for us to realize our own value, the environment has to reflect that back to us. And sometimes that's best done in the therapy room. This happens for the child when the parents are happy around the child and can really see him or her. See the child as they are, for who they are, rather than for what they do or what they can bring to the parent. When the essential worth is not mirrored or supported in the child or we can develop a hole. And in that hole, we lose the connection to our essential worth. And we can feel worthless, unworthy. And because that's painful, we cover that hole up in any number of ways. We all have different coping strategies. We might become a high achiever, we might become a pleaser, we might become a perfectionist. One way is to make yourself very valuable to people, for example, by going to medical school and becoming a great teacher or healer. And this can cover up a hole where there's lack of worth. Whenever anything happens to take away our defense, that hole opens up and we get upset because we don't want to see it. And then we blame the other person. Here's a short video of Gabor talking about how these holes develop in the person.
One of my teachers, whose name is A.H. Almas, A-L-M-A-A-S, he talks about his theory of holes. And what he means by that is that we're born, he says, with our essence intact, our essential selves intact. Clarity, presence, love. These are all aspects of essence. Value. An infant does not think of themselves as worthless. No, this is not conscious on their part. That essence has to develop, but it's there. However, for the essence to develop, the environment has to mirror your essence. So for you to realize your value, your worth, the environment has to mirror that back to you.
When we have this hole that separates us from our wholeness, then we easily get triggered when something incomplete in us has been uncovered and we don't like it. Then we blame the other person for uncovering it. We may get angry with the other person and we say they triggered me. And we blame them for triggering us. Somehow that's wrong for what they said or what they did. There's another way of working with triggers. Every time we're triggered, we can either attack or dismiss or get away from whoever is triggering you by withdrawing from them or attacking them. Or we can stay with the emotion and work it through. So we have two choices, either resist it or stay with the emotion that arises within us, process it, feel it, work it through. That's the better choice. If we withdraw or attack, we're perpetuating ourselves as a victim. We're repeating the strategy that we used when we were a child. So we can use these triggers as opportunities and consider that some of the worst things that happen to us can also be the best thing if we can turn it into a teaching opportunity. Almas has this very rich quote. He says, "You're complex. All the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life are not chance or haphazard. They're actually yours. They're specifically yours, designed specifically for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else. That part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. That part of you loves you so much that it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It will make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That is its purpose." Taking this to heart, we can consider that every time we get upset by somebody or something, a part of us guided us there because there's something we need to learn. In a sense, we invited it. This refers to mental and physical illness, accidents, relationship issues, really anything that's happening to us. So how can we deal with that? Well, when we get triggered, we can be grateful, get curious, and ask, what is the hole here? What is the emptiness inside of me? What is the loss? What am I missing? And we can do an inquiry into all those questions. The trigger might bring up anger or pain for us. And one way to skillfully relate to anger and pain is to just accept that it's there. Acknowledge that that anger or pain may be based on a false assumption, perhaps from the past. Usually we think somebody else makes us angry, but whenever there's anger, there's pain underneath it. So we can acknowledge that there's pain there. There's pain in us. There's pain in the client when they become angry. Recognize that the anger is a surface covering over pain. So we accept that the pain is valid, accept that it's there. It may be conscious or unconscious pain, but the first step is to simply accept that it's there and to hold it with compassion. And many of our behaviors are there to block that pain. We can have addictions, neurotic behaviors, self-defense strategies that are all in place to block the pain because it was too difficult or impossible for us to process it when we were children. As a child, it's impossible to live and be alone with pain. We don't have any self-regulating mechanisms to be able to deal with it. We need the calming, healthy adult to help us process that pain within ourselves as a child. So the only choice we have as a child is to do something to escape from pain. And so we develop some sort of escape strategy to protect ourselves. As a therapist, we want to help the child or the inner child in the adult to experience the pain in a safe manner so that they don't run away from it. In essence, this is where we got stuck. We ran away from that pain, didn't fully metabolize it. Now it needs to be processed. A quote from the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying states, "Whatever you do, don't run away from your pain. Accept your pain and remain vulnerable." When we're working with clients, pain may be overwhelming of what the client is expressing or feeling. And we need to be fearless in the face of their pain. If we are afraid of their pain or can't go there with them, it means we haven't dealt with our own. When pain is experienced, allowed, and held, it transforms. So our job is really to be with them in their pain, to hold them in that space so they can experience their pain. And then it transforms. Pain actually has a purpose. Now, how to handle your emotions. The issue is not whether you show your emotion or not, but whether you can experience it and know you are experiencing it. Because we're often not aware that we have emotion. We block the emotion. So the first step is to actually recognize the emotion and feel it, experience it. What will determine your life is not your emotions, but the attempts not to feel our sadness, our anger, our fear, or our shame. And instead, we compensate by developing coping mechanisms that keep us from allowing us to experience ourselves the way we really are. So we become attached to, identified with the coping mechanism and that part of the personality that again is either an achiever or a perfectionist or a beautiful person or a good person or a nice person or a pleaser or a helper, any of those. And if we don't want our lives to be determined by what happened to ourselves as children, we need to allow ourselves to feel exactly what's there. Relational trauma, which occurs during child development, happens when there isn't space for us to feel what we feel. So as adults now, we need to give that space to ourselves to feel what we didn't experience fully as a child, and to give space to our clients to feel that. When we are being curious about feelings, we need to distinguish between a feeling and a perception. We differentiate feelings from perceptions in this compassion inquiry approach because feelings are about ourselves, perceptions are often not accurate, and the recognition of a perception versus a feeling opens up an inquiry. So if we have a perception, we can inquire into it and see how it started and question, is it really true? Feelings include being sad, afraid, angry, happy, joy, love, hate, shame, pain, disgust. And when clients say, I'm feeling numb, the numbness usually reflects disconnect from the body. There are feelings within that numbness that are buried because the person is disconnected from the body. Our bodies are always giving us messages. And so instead of looking for an emotional feeling, we can just say, well, what's your experience right now in the body in the present moment? What's the sensation anywhere? Or do you feel yourself sitting on your chair? Do you feel yourself feeling cold in any extremity, etc.? If somebody says, I've been in so much pain recently, I feel numb, then the first question might not be to challenge their state of being numb, but to say, oh, tell me about the pain you've been having. It's a wonderful invitation for them to open up. Tell me about the pain you've been having. With that question, we immediately acknowledge that there's something there that has caused them to be numb as a coping strategy. Perceptions or interpretations that are not feelings include, I feel attacked, I feel put down, I feel demeaned, I feel dismissed, I feel invalidated, I feel devalued, I feel rejected, I feel intruded upon, and all of these can be examined. Remember, the feelings are valid. We don't argue with a feeling, but we can examine the perceptions. This doesn't mean that perceptions are wrong, but it's really a question of investigating and being clear about what is actually going on, rather than accepting the perception or the interpretation as the truth. When somebody says they feel intruded upon or rejected, we can actually look into that situation. In other words, it's not our job to validate people's experiences from the past, what they say happened, and why they say something might happen, and why somebody did something to them. We weren't there when it happened. But we can help them to find what meaning they have assigned to the experience. It's not about, is that meaning true or not? It's just, what is the meaning you've assigned to that experience? And then let's inquire into it. Let's help them inquire into that meaning that was assigned. We can work with the feeling, but there's nothing we can do about the experience that triggered the feeling because it already happened. Somebody else did it. So we can inquire into their interpretation, and we can be there for them to express the feeling and go into the body to experience the feeling. But we can't change what happened. Underneath the perception of abandonment, there is a self-belief. What kind of person gets abandoned? Someone who's worthless. So underneath all of these interpretations that all of us make about our past, we can also uncover the unconscious beliefs. What do you really believe about yourself if that's your interpretation? And then question those and reframe them. It's important that we question these beliefs because we don't want to leave people in that state. We want them to recognize that actually they're not worthless, and to recognize that that's only a mistaken belief that they made when they were a young child. So we help them to make that distinction. Now we'll talk about expressing feelings, and it's important that we are able to experience our feelings of anger or shame or sadness or fear. But then the question is about how helpful is it to express those feelings all the time? When is it helpful to express those feelings, and when is it helpful to simply be aware of it within ourselves? Is the freedom expressing whatever is in us, is that the freedom? Or is the freedom looking at our interpretation and having some response flexibility, some choice over our interpretation? So these are both different kinds of freedoms. The greatest liberation is when you can question your own interpretation and recognize that you are not responsible for anybody else's feelings, and also nobody else is responsible for your feelings. And how each of us feels is 100% our responsibility. If we're secure within ourselves, nothing can touch us. If the parents have been really solid in the relationship with the child, then social statements and judgments do not mean that much at all to the child. They'll have their integrity within themselves. They'll have that wholeness intact. They'll know who they are. They'll be connected to their essence. So if someone taunts them or criticizes them, it doesn't matter that much because they know who they are. Resilience is the capacity not to be crushed by an experience. When we're resilient, we're like a piece of rubber. We can be squeezed, but we'll always spring back to our original self. We won't be crushed by the experience. And resilience in humans is a function of relationship. So we develop this resilience again when, as children, we're mirrored by our parents. Our essential value is maintained, is honored, is respected, is mirrored back to us. We know who we are. The self is intact. The opposite of that is experiencing shame when we weren't mirrored, when our essence wasn't mirrored. Shame is corrosive and ultimately isolating. And the belief at the core of shame is that what we are harboring within us is so dreadful that if anyone ever found out, we would be rejected and banished from human companionship. Shame expresses our fear of a loss of connection, and we're wired to connect. So this loss of connection is frightening and very harmful to us. There's some things that are healthy to have some shame about, such as when we lie or when we cheat or manipulate. If we feel ashamed about either of those, it's a healthy response because it can move us to self-correct and not behave that way again. But that's not shame about the self. Shame about the self is different, and it happens, or it starts in childhood, early childhood, in infancy. Let's say there's a 9-month-old baby and the mother breaks eye contact with that child. If this happens over a long period of time, or the child will go into a shame state, and the shame state is a response to separation from the responsiveness of the mother, from that mutual responsiveness and attunement of the mother. The child isn't attuned to for a length of time, then they'll go into the state of shame. And if this continues over and over again, then the child will develop a corrosive shame about their very self, not about what they've done, but about who they are as people. Later on in that home environment, the child is often told over and over again that this break is happening because they are bad. They did something wrong. So their whole nervous system and belief system takes that on. I must have done something wrong to deserve this. And we come to believe that we're ashamed because of all the bad things we've done. But really, we're ashamed because our parents, especially the mother, broke the contract with us. When we were born, essentially our parents had a contract with us saying, we're going to bring you into the world and look after you. Looking after you means we're going to be responsive to you. We're going to be synchronously, reciprocally, in an attuned way, in touch with you. we're going to be, when the parent is not able to fulfill the contract because of their own limitations and the contract is broken repeatedly, the child experiences shame. And then the shame becomes lodged at the very core of the self. So how do we deal with that? Well, we have to bring it out into the open. What we bring forth will save us. What we do not bring forth will destroy us. And as a job of the therapist, it's important for us to be able to have such compassion and create such safety that the client can bring forth some of these things that they're very ashamed about. If we are compassionate, the clients will feel safe with us and see the truth of what they have done without the shame. The less shame the client can experience, the more likely they are to own responsibility. And that concludes Gabor's teachings in Module 2. Enjoy the module.